Good evening. Hello. Just while we're giving everybody a chance to log in, I've got a few things to say. First of all, about the new environment. It's a change from orange to blue, but it comes with some changes in the technology that we're using. And so this was originally intended to be sort of rolled out with the new teaching series that was meant to happen last week. I hope we've got all the technical things sorted. It looks like it from all the different bits of monitoring I now have, but it's all very new. And so if we get it wrong, please bear with us. We'll do the best that we can. I need to say a little something about last week. It's very rare that I find myself reminded that I'm not actually as well as I sometimes feel. Those of you who know me know that a long time ago now, we discovered that I had a long-standing immune condition that meant that ultimately I lost my own kidneys. And so I'm a transplant patient. That at least partly explains some of the reasons why we've been quite cautious in the aftermath of most people coming out of kind of lockdowns and being cautious with the pandemic. But this last week, a week ago Friday, actually on our wedding anniversary, at the end of the day, we'd had a delivery made to the house and we put them into storage. And that process normally takes sort of an hour and a half, and there was rain coming. And so rather foolishly, feeling that I was on top of the world and could do anything, I really attacked it. I got it done in about 20 minutes. And no sooner had I done it than I immediately realized it was a really stupid thing to do. Folks who are familiar with some other conditions that I don't have, but have similar experiences, I guess, people who've got CFS or ME. And there's an experience called post-exertional malaise, or PEM. I've only had it a couple of times in my life, and I'm very grateful that's all it's been. But a week ago on Friday, it hit me like a train. And it left me pretty much stuck in bed for 72 hours. And then because of all the other complications of my illness, it meant that since then, I've really been recovering from the recovery from the PM episode. I'm so grateful for all the prayer, for all the messages, for all the way in which people have reached out, for the way in which the Harvest folks stepped up, and church just got on quite happily without me. I am not necessary. And there's a great joy in that, a great comfort and a great confidence in it. So if you're one of the people that said thank you, or one of the people who said, I mean, quite after me, or one of the people that said you were praying, thank you. It really does mean the world. It was a good reminder in some ways. Because tonight is the nearest Sunday. Obviously, you don't often get doctor's appointments on a Sunday. It's the nearest Sunday to 20 years since I had my transplant. And so tonight, because I don't really want to let this moment pass by without giving God thanks, I want to tell you a little bit about what God has done for me in those 20 years. When I was originally diagnosed, it was after having left work in the career that I thought was going to be my career, and finding myself saying, God, well, what do I do next? And so in 2003, I left my job. In 2004, in the summer of 2004, I was diagnosed with late-stage renal failure as a result of this immune condition that I have. And from day one, the doctors made it absolutely clear that they felt they had missed the boat. That's not a criticism of them at all. I have a huge amount of time for some of those doctors, particularly who worked on me in the early days. But very much that I was already in a state that meant it was going to be very difficult to treat me. And God said, no. Some of you know I have a story of being healed when I was much younger, when I was in my teens, after a road traffic accident. And God spoke on the very same day, actually, in which I was told that the diagnosis was this long-term immune condition problem, that my kidneys were failing and were too far gone to save, that I would certainly need dialysis and probably a transplant, and that I was already too ill, really, for them to consider preparing me for dialysis. On that same day, God gave me a promise, and he gave me a promise that was not what people want to hear. He promised me, rather than healing me, he was going to give me the strength that I need. In fact, he was very specific. He said, I will not heal you this time, but I will give you the strength that you need. And so tonight I could talk to you about the process of getting to transplant. I could talk to you about the multiple times when I found myself with blood sepsis, hours from my body finally giving in. I could talk to you about the terrifying weight loss. And you look at me now and you'd say, well, surely you'd be happy to lose a bit of weight. But at my lightest, I was down to 42 kilos is the lowest recorded weight on my medical records, and it was awful. I'm very grateful. There aren't very many pictures of me from that time. But God was faithful. I could talk to you about how on the day that I was going for transplant, the doctors told me that there was only about a 20% chance that the transplant would be successful. And that was because my red blood cell count was too low really to risk the operation without potentially having a transfusion, and that immediately causes an impact on your body's rejection of the transplant. But God had spoken to a friend of ours, and he'd given her a vision actually of my blood results and said that it was going to be fine. And I remember talking with both my doctors and with my parents. My transplant is from my mother, and talking about the way in which it looked like there was no point in doing it. It really did look like we were too far gone, that this was it, really. And getting the message that our dear friend Caroline had seen my blood results go from 2.3, and don't worry too much about the numbers, but from 2.3 to 8.2. And as I was waiting for the operation, with the doctors having again warned me many times, making sure that I really understood there's almost no chance this is going to work, the transplant coordinator came running into the room and said, we've just had your final bloods back. We don't really understand this, but your red cell count is 8.2. Time and again, the prognosis was you're done. The prognosis was, we can't help you. We'll do what we can. And I'm not pretending for a second that I had some sort of experience where the doctors weren't involved. The doctors did incredible work. And so I had my transplant 20 years ago, almost to the day. And they said to me, it's gone far better than expected. And I thought, oh, that's great. We think probably you've got about 5 to 6 years before we'll have to start getting you ready to go back onto dialysis, because you are very ill. There's a lot of long-term damage from before we identified the problem. So, a healthy person would expect maybe 10 years, but you're not a healthy person. Well, time passed. And tonight I really want to highlight a conversation I had about 10 years ago. My then consultant, I was going up to Bristol to spend just sort of 20 minutes just talking through things. And he opened the conversation with, well, today's a day I wasn't looking forward to. And that's never a good thing to hear from your doctor. And he began to explain to me how, in his opinion, despite the fact that my blood tests looked completely normal, or normal for a transplant patient with an immune condition, he was concerned that we were rapidly approaching the 10th anniversary of my transplant. And he said, look, the bottom line is your body took such a hammering. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to even get you ready for dialysis. But what we're going to do is we're going to monitor you over the next year. We're expecting to see a sudden reduction in your renal function. And then at that point, we'll try to operate while you've still got some kind of residual health, so that we can prepare you for whatever dialysis comes next. You probably can't have another transplant. So we had the conversation. And as is often the case with doctors, it can be quite hard to have a conversation where your brain is thinking about faith and theirs is thinking about the medical realities. And I'm always very careful not to try and thrust my faith down a doctor's throat. But we had that conversation. And then a year later, my bloods were still showing that there was no deterioration in the kidneys. And we had a similar conversation again. And the following year, he didn't bother with that conversation. We just talked about the fact that my kidney seemed to be doing surprisingly well, considering the state I was in when I'd received it and how long I'd had it. And at almost every turn, and through actually several now changes of consultant and through the COVID pandemic, time and again, the conversation was about, well, to be honest, you know, you're not going to get very many more years out of this. You're already way beyond the point. And here we are tonight, 20 years after that original transplant, 22 years after I left work, probably around 35 years after the original problem which created the immune response that ultimately is still trying to kill me. What I want to tell you is that God is faithful. I want to tell you that God's promises are true. I want to tell you that there is nothing of me, in me, or about me that is unusual or surprising. I'm not talking about my own situations that you think, didn't he do well? Because you could ask the people that know me best. They would tell you there's plenty of times when I was all for giving up, when I was all like, you know what, I've had a good run. I don't need to be here. It's fine. I'll be okay. When the types of treatment that I was facing were things that I simply did not want. If there's a disease you don't want as someone who has a problem with needles, it's renal failure. But here I am, and I want to tell you that God does not fail. That his promises are still true regardless of circumstances. That he's perfectly capable of raising the dead, so he can use someone whose body has given up on them long since. And I want to read to you some verses that this last week in particular, actually I've been reading again. I've read them a lot over the last 20 years, but this last week, as my body didn't let me do what I wanted to do, we had to postpone our new teaching series that's kind of this year's virtual church holiday. And that's not something that I take lightly, and I wasn't able to preach as often this last week as I would normally. But I want to talk about God. I want to talk about his faithfulness, his strength, his power, his presence, and the fact that even when it looks like actually I'm doing all right and everything's great, the truth of the matter is I am completely dependent on the one who never fails. This is from Psalm 18. The whole psalm is fantastic, but I'm going to read for you just from verse 28. Psalm 18, starting at verse 28. For you will light my lamp. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. For by you I can run against a troop. By my God I can leap over a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is proven. He is a shield to all who trust in him. For who is God except the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? It is God who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of deer and sets me on my high places. He teaches my hands to make war so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You, Lord, have also given me the shield of your salvation. Your right hand has held me up. Your gentleness has made me great. You enlarged my path under me so that my feet did not slip. For who is God except the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? It is God who arms me with strength. You know, when David writes these words, he's a man who needs to be able to fight. He's a man who needs to be able to engage in battle. That's one of the things God appointed him to do. But I'm not appointed to a battle. I'm living in a day of grace. I'm appointed to a completely different set of requirements and purpose. But if it's ever been possible, and if it's ever been good, if God has ever used it at all, I want to say this: he is the one who teaches my hands too. And you can fill that with anything of value, whether it's to pick up an instrument, whether it's to build a website, whether it's to send an email, whether it's to get involved with the practicalities of the community program over the years, whether it's been the things that I had to do with just helping people in their lives. The reality is, when I write a legal brief, for one of the people that I support through the tribunal process. It makes no difference. He teaches my hands. No wisdom in me, it's his. No strength in me, it's his. No great noble resilience in me. If I stand, it's because he keeps me standing. And God does not fail. He never has and he never will. And tonight, the reason I tell you that is not so that you can say, well, didn't he do lovely things for Dylan? I want you to understand that God has no favorites. You see, I don't need to go into a lot of detail of my life because you aren't living my life. I don't have to talk in great depth about all the tiny little things, or the things which to me were hugely significant, but you would never experience them. Because your needs are not my needs and your struggle's not my struggle. You don't fail in the ways I fail. You don't need guidance in the ways that I need guidance. You have your own unique life. You're a child who is beloved by Father God, and he has no favorites. And so you can fill in the gaps. He teaches your hands. Whatever you need, whatever he calls you to, in whatever area you need to be victorious, you need to be resilient, you need to have strength, and you need to be able to bring to bear the character, the life, the power, the grace of God. For who is God except the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? It is God who arms all of his people with strength and makes all of our ways perfect. That word, both the Hebrew word in the Old Testament and then in the New Testament, where Jesus says that we should be perfect even as our Father in heaven is perfect, it speaks of completeness. It speaks not only of completeness in who we are, it speaks of completeness in what we do, what we accomplish. You know, there are promises that I believe God gave to me. And they're nobody's business but mine. And there are things that God has said he wants me to do in my life, and they are for me to pursue, and they're for me to seek God about. But the one thing I'm sure of is God himself. He will never fail. And he's able to make my way complete. He's able to make me one who finishes what he promised, who accomplishes what he purposed, those things that God planned, those good works before ordained that I should walk in them, that we read about in Ephesians. God has those things for me, and I won't miss one of them because of some medical misadventure. I won't miss one of them because this old body of mine is pretty croaky now. Tonight, I want to honor God for 20 years of life that I had no business to expect, no right to demand, medically no hope of seeing. But God has not failed. He is absolutely faithful. I have the joy of knowing the purposes of God, the blessings of God. Getting to watch my little boy grow up. When the doctor said it was impossible that there should ever be a little boy to grow up. God is faithful. He does not fail, and he has no favorites. If I could tell you one thing, it would be to trust Jesus. Not to trust him a little bit, not to trust him at the point where you don't think you can do it anymore, not to trust him for just the stuff which sounds like it's supernatural, but to trust him in everything. To be willing to be completely dependent, to say, do you know what? You are my life. You are my hope. You are everything that I need. And I promise you, just as he hasn't ever failed me, he won't ever fail you. Sure, I'm a child in the house. There are days I trip up over my own feet. There are days when I have no idea what I should be doing. There are days when I'm not paying attention in the way that I ought to. But he loves me. He loves you too. And tonight you might be hearing this and saying, well, I've never experienced that, and I don't even know what I believe. You know, there's a funny thing that we've turned belief into a set of facts that we sort of acknowledge must be true. When the Bible talks about faith and belief, it's talking about, who do you trust? Who do you trust? And if you know nothing else tonight but this, that Jesus is the God you can trust, that's enough to start a journey which completely transforms your life. The Bible says whoever calls on the name of Jesus, literally whoever shouts out to him, save me. He's their rescuer. He becomes their life. He transforms their future and delivers them out of all the consequences and all the circumstances of their past. Tonight, I'm celebrating a story of 20 years of physical life that I've been given by God, and it's extraordinary and it's precious. But you know what? Compared to his life within me, compared to the experience of knowing God in Christ, all of the other stuff is trivial. God is good. God is faithful. God can equip you for the perfect life for which he formed you. He knows you. He does not want to exclude you. He doesn't want to hold you at arm's length. He doesn't want to leave you to your own devices or abandon you to your fate. Far from it. He loves you. He can meet you where you are. And it doesn't matter what the prognosis is. It doesn't matter what the world says about you. It doesn't matter if you could list all the reasons why you're not able. God is able. God is faithful. And this is who Jesus is. He's the one who will light your lamp, will enlighten your darkness, will enable you to run against a troop, leap over a wall, for his way is perfect. His word is proven, tried and shown to be true. He's a shield to everyone who trusts in him. For who is God except the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? He will arm you with strength, make your way perfect, make your feet like the feet of a deer who dances on the high places. He can teach your hands to do what your hands were made for, so that your arms can bring about things that you could not in the natural accomplish. He can be the shield of your salvation. He can hold you up by the strength of his right hand. His gentleness can make you great. And he can give you a wide open path under your feet so that you do not stumble. I know he can, because that's what he's done for me. And so I don't know if I have another 20 years, another 20 minutes. Because of Jesus, my future is certain. My life is in him. And I say this with no disrespect to my doctors whatsoever. Whatever they say at my next checkup, whatever my next set of blood tests might show, my life belongs to Jesus. It's in his hands. And because he is my strength and my life and my hope, nothing, nobody, no circumstance, no opinion, nothing seen or unseen has any say in the future that he has prepared for me. He's got no favorites. He's got a life prepared for you as well. That's our thoughts for this evening. Just a quick notice before we finish. So we're into our blue space. I hope it wasn't too bad. You can always let me know about that. Somebody dropped me a message if there was issues with sound or glare or all the other things, or if I'm just a bit too bright. It feels very bright to me in here. Tomorrow night, starting at 8 o'clock, is our new series. It's a series called Growth. I'd appreciate those of you who've been praying for me. Please keep praying. I'm not fully out of the woods in terms of recovery from the episode I had sort of a week ago now, which is going to make just doing this week is going to be physically quite demanding, but I believe I'm ready for it. I believe that God has something to say. I want him to be heard. Sometimes we can make a real idol out of our own preparation, out of us being really ready and having it all joined together the way we would like it, as though somehow it rests in us. But the Bible's absolutely clear: the letter without the Spirit is death. So I really pray this week that the things that God has to communicate, he communicates, hopefully with me, but in spite of me. I don't want to get in the way of that. And if you could pray that I could have wisdom about it. But 8 o'clock tomorrow night, we're going to start session 1, Growth is of God. You can just go to our website, click on the cross logo in the middle, and then click on the event tab. And all this series there, it's already all queued up there. 8 o'clock every evening, and then each one will be available. Once it's been live, it'll be available on catch up. But we'd love you to join in live. And we just pray it'll be a blessing. It's, in some ways, I guess, it's an odd thing for a small gathering that exists online to talk about growth. But actually, God is doing something eternal in all of his people, in all of his kingdom. And so we're going to talk about it from lots of different aspects. And I really hope that it's an encouragement to your heart. So tomorrow night, Monday the 10th, starting at 8 o'clock, God willing, if nothing else goes wrong, we will absolutely be starting our new series, and we really hope you can join us. Either way, have an amazing week. The Lord bless you. And God willing, we'll see you next Sunday night for the next Harvest Live.